and welcome to Through Africa, the program whereby we discuss Africa in details, its history, education, and a lot of other topics. It is still me, your host, Mercy Bamgola, and today we'll be bringing to you the program live from our studios here in Ankara, Turkey. We'll be starting with the current flooding situation in Borno State, Nigeria. Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State in Nigeria, has faced persistent flooding. The flooding was caused by the collapse of a dam following heavy rainfall. Thousands of people have been forced from their homes by the flood waters, and at least 30 people have died and more than 58 people injured. Two major bridges in the capital have been partially collapsed. Critical infrastructure like schools and hospitals remain limited. Residents must rely on humanitarian aid to survive. A closer look into the history of flooding in Nigeria explains that flooding is not a new phenomenon in the country. In 2022, UNICEF reported that more than 1.5 children were at a risk as a devastating flood hit the country. Out of the 36 states, 34 were affected, with 1.3 million people displaced. Not only were people forced out of their homes, but cases of waterborne diseases were also recorded. And skin diseases, respiratory infection, and cases of diarrhea were on the rise. The flooding is adding a new layer of complexity to the already uncertain humanitarian situation in the country. Now we'll be moving to Nigeria, speaking with Polum David, who will be enlightening us on what the situation is in Borno State, Nigeria. Hello, Polum. We would like to get a little bit of information from you. What is the current situation like in Borno State in regards to the flooding?
Well, at the moment, the thing is that the waters are receding, but it's still a very sad situation at the moment. People are beginning to count their lost lives. Have been lost, about 30 lives and counting. Farmlands have been submerged, cattle, markets, businesses have all been affected. So there are also fears of outbreak of diseases like you had mentioned earlier. So at the moment, not so much. It doesn't look like a very good sight. There's still so much sorrow on ground. People are still weeping. The government has moved as many people as they can to internally displaced persons camp to see how they can at least save lives and see what they could salvage and give these people grains and food, bread, and all of that. But many people lost all they had, lost houses, lost properties, and some families are also missing. Some children are submerged. So it's a very sad situation at the moment. The government is doing all they can, especially because everything that happened a bit unexpectedly. The Allow dam broke. It's been having infrastructural issues for a while now, but let's say the government sort of ignored it. And 30 years ago, a similar thing happened. And this year, again, we've lost so many lives and properties to it. So it's been a very sad situation here in Maiduguri.
Okay, all right. That's a very sad situation. You've mentioned that the government is doing something about it, but I just want to ask, like, in general, how is the government of Nigeria responding to this?
Well, some government actors are saying climate change is responsible, the heavy rainfall, but some other actors have said we cannot just point all fingers to climate change because the government are also at fault. People have also built houses on waterways. The flood, the dams had showed signs of packing up, but everybody ignored. And so for now, what the government is just doing is providing relief materials for those affected, providing medication, providing care. Non-governmental organizations are also coming together to see, because like the governor of Borno State said, he cannot do it alone. The government alone cannot shoulder this because Borno State is a state that has in the past few years suffered from so many, even had humanitarian issues. So they've had issues like this, people displaced, people looking for, children lost, families lost, issues like this have always happened because of insurgency. And so the government is already overstretched. But so far, the president was there a few days ago Like lawmakers have gone there, the UN, so many people have donated money. So they're giving about 10,000 naira to heads of households, giving them bread, giving them food, and trying to see what they can do, trying to sort out certain businesses. Businesses are on grind what they can to see what they can salvage. So for now, the government is not doing so much aside just giving them monies and just giving them assurances.
All right, thank you, Polum. I'll still be stay there. I'll still be coming back to you. Now we'll go to Lagos. We'll be talking about the Dangote Refinery. The Dangote Refinery has started its first premium motor spirit petrol rollout from its 650,000 barrels per day. The president of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, explained on September 3 that the first sample of his refinery appeared clearer than the petrol currently in circulation. A few videos have been circulating, corroborating the claim that the petrol from the refinery is clearer than previously sold products. Welcome back again, Polo. We would like to ask you, does this opening of the Dangote refinery promise a reduction in the fuel prices? I mean, we've been seeing a few cases of the numbers going out. The NNPC has been claiming it's bought petrol for a certain price, and the Dangote refinery refuting the claims. So does this promise in any way a reduction in fuel prices?
Well, like experts have said, the Dangote refinery is a private business. They're also there to make profits. And so what they have assured for now is quality petrol aside a cheaper petrol. Nigeria being one of the highest producers of crude, people have expected that we shouldn't be queuing at fuel stations for hours to purchase petroleum resources. And so for now, we are hoping that Dangote refinery, which was commissioned about a year ago to turn out about 650 barrels of crude oil per day, has said they are going to be solely selling to NNPC, like you have mentioned, yes. And you've also mentioned that the oil produced by, or refined rather, by the Dangote refinery is cleaner, which is very correct, and of higher quality, which Nigerians are happy about. But for the price, no, it's not going to be cheaper for now because Dangote refinery has said they get the crude not at a very cheap price. It is still expensive. And comparing the Naira dollar difference, the forex rate in Nigeria, it's the inflation and all of that affecting businesses in Nigeria would also affect, or is also affecting Dangote refinery. And so it is not exactly cheap. Fuel is sold at almost 1,000 naira and even more in some parts of Nigeria. So no, it is not cheap. Dangote refinery has categorically said, no, we shouldn't hope for a miracle anytime soon. But for availability, yes, because that is what they hope to achieve, to make sure that fuel is always at our pumps when we want it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for shedding more light on these topics. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you would be ready to answer our questions whenever we ask them. Thank you, Paulo, once again.
Thank you, Tunesi.
Bye. Now we move to Congo, where we'll be talking about the Congo crisis, its history, and the current situation. The Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, also known as the DRC Congo, is a country in Central Africa. It is the second largest country by area in the continent after Algeria. The capital is Kinshasa, and the country is known for being home to different mineral resources like iron ore, gem-quality diamonds, gold, and coal. It is different from the Republic of Congo. To distinguish these two countries, the capital of the DRC is added parenthetically. Since gaining independence from Belgium in 1960, the country has experienced a series of changes in its name, the political system, and leadership, and was once known as the Republic of Zaire between 1971 to 1997. The current name is derived from the Congo River and originates in the colonial period. The Europeans identified the river with the Kingdom of the Congo people who lived near its mouth. After the overthrow of General Mobutu Sese Seko in 1997, the country's name, the Democratic Republic of Congo, was reinstated. This was followed by a civil war, which officially ended in 2003. The First Congo War, otherwise known as the First African World War, began in the wake of the 1994 Rwandan genocide, during which ethnic Hutu extremists killed an estimated 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus in Rwanda. During and after the genocide, nearly 2 million Hutu refugees crossed the Congolese border. A small subset of those Rwandans who entered DRC were Hutu extremists who began organizing militias within the Congo. This war was won in 1997. The Second Congo War broke out after the relationship between Kigali and Kinshasa worsened. The head of the government of Congo began to remove ethnic Tutsis from its government and took measures to weaken the Rwandan military presence in eastern DRC. The Second War continued for a while series of peace agreements were held between both countries. But despite all of this, the unrest and the chaos persist in the eastern DRC. Most recently, the UN Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region warned that tensions between these two countries could lead to an open military confrontation. The eastern DRC is under attack by contending military forces. Exchanges of fire and missile attacks between the M23, which is also known as the March 23 movement, the Congolese forces, the Rwandan troops, and other militia groups remain commonplace. According to the latest information, 8% of the DRC population has been displaced due to extreme poverty and violence in the country. The UN reports that there have been great violations against children in the eastern DRC. The DRC is the country most affected by food insecurity in the world, and it is home to the second largest displacement crisis in Africa, with more than 8 million Congolese people displaced. The displaced population urgently needs medical and humanitarian aid and security. Now we move to South Africa, where we'll be talking about the energy crisis and the current situation of South Africans. The South African energy crisis, popularly known as load shedding, started in the later months of 2007, towards the end of Thabo Mbeki's second term as president, and it continues till date. So if you were born after 2007 in South Africa, you know what this really means. Back in 1994, when the apartheid ended and the African National Congress won South Africa's first ever democratic elections, the government promised an additional electricity provision to the already existing 36% of South Africans who had electricity in their homes. During the 1980s, the state-owned power utility Eskom's building program was so aggressive that it had a surplus of electricity. The goal of the government at this time seemed very achievable. The coal industry in South Africa was generating income by exporting mainly to European countries. With the inexpensive coal provided by mines next door, this transformed into a source of energy. Electricity became very cheap. Now, 30 years later, Eskom is the biggest challenge facing the country, with its huge debt of over $21 billion, despite receiving $14 billion in government bailout since 2008. Regular scheduled power cuts are a thing in South Africa. It is now a permanent part of the daily lives of the people and a source of economic crisis. After the apartheid ended, the government policies were based on a set of neoliberal assumptions about a limited role for the state. Eskom tried to convince the government to allow it to build more power stations. Under the microeconomic policy, however, the government decided that new power stations must be built by black empowered businesses. There and then, the prices of electricity needed to be increased, and it needed to actually increase, which made finances very hard and made it financially hard for the people to access electricity. New power stations were never built because exports were dependent on cheap electricity. Scheduled power started and continues till now. Car Powership is a Turkish operator and owner of a fleet of power ships. These power ships they are available under electricity generation services contracts, and they supply electricity to shortage-stricken countries, especially in the Middle East, in Africa, and Asia. Now we'll move to Ethiopia, where we'll be speaking about the Ethiopia's electricity car target. So the current fuel shortages and innovative policies have driven a rapid growth of electric vehicles in Ethiopia. This is more prominent on the streets of Addis Ababa, the country's capital, where electric cars are becoming more prominent. They are becoming more prominent alternatives to traditional gas-powered cars. It has been estimated that there are around 100,000 electric vehicles on Ethiopian roads, and there are expectations for substantial growth. The government foresees this number increasing to more than 4 times its current figure by 2032. Earlier this year, the government implemented a ban on all gas-powered passenger vehicle imports. Ethiopia has become the first country globally to implement such drastic measures to reduce reliance on fossil fuels entirely. The drive towards electrification is not solely eco-driven. It also addresses financial constraints with the expensive cost of importing fuel, leveraging the country's abundant hydropower resources, which offers economic and environmental benefits, since 96% of Ethiopia's electricity is derived from clean sources. It is important to state here that last year, Ethiopia was set to launch the production of Russian ladder cars on its territory for the African market. A deal was signed with one of the Ethiopian companies, and the cars will be produced in Ethiopia. Auto manufacturers are now showing interest to go to Ethiopia to build assembly line. Now we'll be speaking with Natoli, Miss Natoli, who will be talking to us more about the situation in Ethiopia and how prominent the electric cars are in Ethiopia. Hello and welcome, Natoli.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mercy.
Thank you. We would just like you to speak generally on what the situation is like, especially in the capital city, Addis Ababa.
So Ethiopia is gradually moving towards electrical cars as part of its effort to embrace the clean energy and reduce the fossil fuel dependence. And so the government is showing support by offering reduced import taxes on the electric vehicles to people to be able to access it easily, which is a very good step. And even private companies are also getting involved by starting to import the models like the Hyundai Kona Electric. But however, there are still some challenges, especially with the charging infrastructure, which is just starting to develop in the capital city, which is Addis Ababa. But with Ethiopia's strong renewable energy resource, particularly the hydroelectric power, the shift to the electrical vehicle looks promising. But as I said, we need more awarenesses and investments in the infrastructure, and also we need investments in the local production to make these electrical vehicles more accessible and affordable for many people to use it.
Okay, thank you. All right, there, I'll just ask a question just on the last sentence that you spoke about. Many people want to access these electric cars, and as far as we know it now, it is more accessible in the capital city, which are cities. What is the situation like in the rural areas?
So outside the capital city, outside the Addis Ababa, the use of electrical cars in Ethiopia is quite limited. It might be a little popular, which is to the cities that are near to the Addis Ababa, but in the rural areas, it's quite limited. Primarily, the lack of the charging stations being the concern for the other cities to even access these electrical vehicles. It's even harder to operate this electrical vehicles to go a long distance travel, and also the infrastructure development is slower as you go far from the capital city to other towns and other parts of the country. So traditional fuel-powered vehicles remain the dominant mode of transport in this part of the country. So the government and the private sector work to promote renewable energy and electric mobility. So there's a hope that in other cities will soon see more charging stations and access to these electrical vehicles, but it still would need a lot of time and investments if the Ethiopian government takes the advantage of this renewable energy resources that is in Ethiopia for the potential growth of these electrical vehicles.
Thank you very much, Natoli, for answering our questions.
Thank you for having me, Mercy.
Thank you. Now we move to the country of Morocco, where we'll talk about Morocco's aim and plans to build the world's biggest stadium in the world. So Morocco is planning to build a stadium of 115,000 spectators for the for the coming World Cup in 2030 with its neighbors in Portugal and Spain. The idea is truly fascinating and the stadium itself astonishing. Morocco is trying to outdo Spain, which alongside Portugal, the three countries are set to host the 2030 World Cup, known as the Grand Stade Hassan II in Casablanca, Morocco. It is projected to be the world's largest football stadium. The current holder for the largest football stadium is the Rogrando 1st of May Stadium in North Korea, which has a capacity of 114,000 people. The traditional Moroccan societal gathering known as the Museum, where Moroccan groups come together for cultural exchanges, inspired the design of this building. The stadium itself has been designed by Paris-based Oulalou and global sport design leaders, Populous. Populous is behind the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and Emirates Stadium in London, a dozen Olympic venues and other stadia around the world. The design principal, Tariq Oulalou, says the Grand Stade Hassan II is deeply rooted in Moroccan culture with its tradition and contemporary expressions. The stadium is recognized as an embodiment of the great tradition of Moroccan hospitality. It should be noted that there were 5 unsuccessful bids by Morocco to host the FIFA World Cup. When FIFA announced that it would be hosting the 2030 World Cup alongside Spain and Portugal, a look into the Grand Stade Hassan II was a huge advantage to the country and to its people. Preparations for groundworks at the site outside Casablanca have begun, and we expect to see more of the grand design in coming years. With that, we have come to the end of today's program, which was also a live program. Thank you very much for watching, and I am still your host, Mercy Bamigbola. For more information or questions, you can always contact us on our WhatsApp number, which will be on the screen. Thank you again for watching, and stay safe. Bye.